It didn't start with a cannon shot. It started with a mistake. A single, careless mistake wrapped around 3 cigars, dropped in a field in Maryland. This lost piece of paper wasn't just an intelligence brief, it was the entire Confederate invasion plan. It was a gift from Providence, a chance to end the American Civil War in a single decisive blow. But in the hands of one man, General George McClellan, this golden opportunity would curdle into the single bloodiest day in American history. A day so terrible it would force Abraham Lincoln to unleash a secret weapon of his own, one that would change the very soul of the nation.
So why was Robert E. Lee even in Maryland? Just weeks earlier, he had humiliated another Union army at the Second Battle of Bull Run. His army was exhausted, undersupplied, and many of his men didn't even have shoes, but their morale was sky high. Lee believed a decisive victory on northern soil could achieve everything at once. It could convince European powers like Britain and France to recognize the Confederacy. It could sway upcoming northern elections against Lincoln and his war effort. And it would allow his hungry army to resupply from the rich Maryland farms. It was an audacious gamble, a high-stakes bet made by a commander at the peak of his powers.
Back in Washington, Abraham Lincoln was trapped. The war was going badly. His generals were failing him. The public was growing tired of the endless casualty lists. More importantly, Lincoln was holding a document he'd been waiting to release for months, the Emancipation Proclamation. But he knew he couldn't issue it from a position of weakness. It would look like a desperate last-ditch effort. Our last shriek on the retreat, as his Secretary of State put it. He needed a victory, a clear, undeniable Union victory, and he had just handed the keys to his army to George McClellan, a man he deeply distrusted. George McClellan was a paradox. He was a brilliant organizer, a man who had taken the broken fragments of an army and forged it into the mighty Army of the Potomac. His men loved him, calling him Little Mac. But he had a fatal flaw. He suffered from a chronic case of the slows. He was overly cautious, meticulous to a fault, and constantly believed he was outnumbered thanks to faulty intelligence from his friend Allan Pinkerton. He saw phantom Confederate armies everywhere. He loved to prepare for battle, but he hated to actually fight one. And it was this man who was now tasked with hunting down the most dangerous army on the continent. Lee's grand plan required him to do something incredibly risky: divide his army in the face of a superior enemy. He sent General Stonewall Jackson to capture the Federal arsenal at Harper's Ferry, while other parts of his army moved to secure his lines of communication. To coordinate this complex maneuver, he issued Special Order 191, detailing the exact routes and objectives for every part of his army. Copies were sent to all his commanders. It was a masterpiece of planning. But in war, masterpieces can be fragile. And one of those copies, intended for General D.H. Hill, was wrapped around 3 cigars for safekeeping, and then somehow, inexplicably, lost. On September 13th, in a field near Frederick, Maryland, Corporal Barton Mitchell of the 27th Indiana sat down to rest. He saw something in the grass, an envelope. Inside were the cigars and the paper. He passed it up the chain of command, and it soon landed on the desk of General McClellan. The general read it, then read it again. His face lit up. He is reported to have exclaimed, "Here is a paper with which if I cannot whip Bobby Lee, I will be willing to go home." He held Lee's entire army in the palm of his hand. He knew where every piece of it was, and he knew they were scattered and vulnerable. The war could be over in a week. This was the moment for speed, for aggression, for a lightning strike that would crush the Confederacy. And what did McClellan do? He waited.
For 18 critical hours, he did almost nothing. He congratulated himself. He planned. He worried. He followed his cautious, plodding nature. Those 18 hours were all Lee needed. A Southern sympathizer in McClellan's camp got word to Lee that the order was compromised. Lee, shocked, immediately moved to concentrate his scattered forces near a small town on the banks of Antietam Creek, Sharpsburg. The golden opportunity was gone. Now, instead of a quick kill, the Union would have to face Lee in a battle of his choosing.
The battle began at dawn on September 17th in a 24-acre cornfield owned by a farmer named David Miller. The corn stood tall, obscuring everything. Union General Joseph Hooker's corps advanced into this field, straight into the teeth of Stonewall Jackson's veterans. What followed was not a fight, it was an industrial-scale slaughter. A survivor would later say the corn was cut down as if by a scythe. Men fired blindly into the smoke a few feet from their enemies. The field changed hands no fewer than 15 times over the next 4 hours.
Artillery on both sides fired canister shot, turning cannons into giant shotguns that ripped huge holes in the advancing lines. Men didn't just die, they were vaporized. The famous Texas Brigade charged into the fray, losing over 82% of their men in minutes, the highest casualty rate for any unit in the entire Civil War. By 9 a.m., the cornfield was a ruin, a carpet of blue and gray uniforms, so thick you could have walked across it without touching the ground. And this was only the first phase of the battle. With the fighting in the cornfields sputtering out, the focus of the battle shifted south to a sunken country lane that had been worn down by years of wagon traffic. It was a perfect, ready-made trench. Here, about 2,500 Confederates under General D.H. Hill dug in and waited. They wouldn't have to wait long. McClellan, instead of a coordinated assault, was committing his army corps by corps, allowing Lee to shift his outnumbered troops to meet each threat.
Wave after wave of Union soldiers from the Second Corps charged across the open ground toward that road, and wave after wave was cut to pieces. The famed Irish Brigade went in, their green flag flying, with their chaplain famously riding ahead of them, shouting absolution to the men as they marched into the storm of lead. They got close, trading volleys at point-blank range, but they too were shattered and forced to fall back. The defenders in the road were holding, inflicting horrific casualties.
The breakthrough finally came, not from a frontal assault, but from a mistake. A Confederate officer gave a confusing order, which part of the line mistook as a command to retreat. This created a gap. Union troops surged forward, and a few regiments found a rise in the ground that allowed them to fire down the length of the road. The result was an execution. The Confederates were trapped in their perfect trench with no escape. In minutes, the sunken road was filled with the dead and dying, piled 2 and 3 deep. It would forever after be known by a new name, Bloody Lane. As the horror in Bloody Lane subsided, the final act of the day's drama was about to unfold on the southern end of the battlefield. Here, General Ambrose Burnside and his 9th Corps had a simple objective: cross Antietam Creek and strike the Confederate right flank. The main crossing point was a sturdy 125-foot stone bridge, later to be named Burnside's Bridge. The problem? To get to it, Union soldiers had to funnel down a narrow road, completely exposed to the heights on the other side. And on those heights, waiting for them, were just 400 men. 400 Georgians under the command of Robert Toombs. From their protected perch, they had a perfect field of fire. They could pick off any Union soldier who dared to approach the bridge. For 3 hours, Burnside's entire corps of over 12,000 men was held in check by this tiny, determined force. It was one of the most remarkable defensive stands of the entire war.
Charge after charge was thrown back. It was a suicide mission. Finally, a combined assault by 2 regiments, the 51st New York and the 51st Pennsylvania, made the final push. Legend has it their commanders spurred them on by promising to restore their recently halted whiskey ration if they took the bridge. Whatever the motivation, it worked. They stormed across, taking heavy casualties, and finally dislodged the Georgians. The bridge was taken, but precious hours had been lost.
Even after taking the bridge, Burnside delayed for another 2 hours, reorganizing his men. This gave Lee just enough time. From Harper's Ferry, 17 miles away, General A.P. Hill had been force-marching his light division since dawn. They were running, not marching. They arrived on the field, exhausted and dusty, at the exact moment Burnside's troops were finally rolling up Lee's right flank. Hill's men, some still in the blue Union uniforms they'd captured at Harper's Ferry, slammed into the exposed Union flank. The attack stalled. The Union advance was stopped cold. As the sun set, the fighting sputtered out. The battle was over, but the horror was just beginning. For the next 24 hours, the fields and woods around Sharpsburg became a real-world vision of hell. The cries of thousands of wounded men filled the night. Clara Barton, the future founder of the Red Cross, was there, calling it the angel of the battlefield as she tended to the endless stream of mangled bodies. The sheer scale of the suffering was incomprehensible. Let's be clear about what these numbers mean. The 22,717 casualties at Antietam were just for a single 12-hour period. It remains the bloodiest single day in all of American history. More Americans died or were wounded at Antietam than on D-Day in World War II, more than in all the other 19th century wars the U.S. fought combined. It was a national trauma, a wound so deep it's hard to fathom today. The next day, September 18th, Lee's battered army was still there. They hadn't run. It was a bluff, a display of pure defiance. He had his back to a river and his army was in tatters. McClellan had nearly 25,000 fresh troops who hadn't even fought the day before. His generals urged him to attack, to finish the job. One decisive push would have destroyed the Army of Northern Virginia and likely ended the war. And once again, McClellan hesitated. He did nothing. That night, Lee's army slipped back across the Potomac into Virginia. The military opportunity was lost forever. Lincoln was furious. He traveled to Antietam to meet with McClellan in person, urging him to pursue Lee. McClellan made excuses. He needed supplies. His horses were tired. Lincoln reportedly said, "If you don't want to use the army, I should like to borrow it for a while." Soon after, he removed McClellan from command for the final time. The general who had been given the greatest gift an army can receive had squandered it through his own paralyzing caution.
But here's the ultimate paradox of Antietam. Militarily, it was a tactical draw. But strategically, it was the victory Lincoln had been waiting for. Lee's invasion had been stopped. He had been forced to retreat from Northern soil. That was enough. The Northern press spun it as a massive triumph, and Lincoln, seizing the political moment, decided it was time to act.
5 days after the battle, on September 22, 1862, Lincoln issued the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation. It declared that as of January 1, 1863, All enslaved people in the states still in rebellion would be thenceforward and forever free. It was a masterstroke. It didn't free a single person in the North or in border states, but it fundamentally changed the purpose of the war.
Suddenly, the war was no longer just about preserving the Union. It was now a war to end slavery. This immediately killed any chance of Britain or France, who had already abolished slavery, from supporting the Confederacy. It also authorized the recruitment of black soldiers into the Union Army, adding a vital source of manpower and moral authority. The blood spilled at Antietam had purchased the political capital for Lincoln to redefine the American experiment. And that is Antietam's bloody secret. It's not just a story of a lost order or a hesitant general. It's the story of how a tactical stalemate became one of the most important political turning points in world history. It was a day of unparalleled butchery, born from a series of blunders that ultimately led to a profound moral victory. The 23,000 men who fell there didn't know it, but their sacrifice on that single terrible day forced a reluctant nation to finally confront its original sin and begin the long, painful journey toward a new birth of freedom. The fields of Antietam are quiet now, but the echoes of that day still shape the country we live in. It stands as a brutal reminder that history can turn on the smallest of chances, a dropped envelope, a moment of hesitation, a last-minute arrival. It teaches us that victory and defeat are not always clear, and that sometimes the most profound changes are born from the most terrible suffering. What part of this battle do you find the most shocking? The sheer luck of the lost order, or the tragic hesitation that followed? Let me know in the comments below.